welcome to the Dadvocacy podcast,
season 2,
episode 1.
Yeah,
I'm Tristan.
I'm
nice
Ryan.
to see you guys.
And we've got a special guest in today's episode. Somebody that I'm super stoked to have on board with us is Mr. Kenneth Rosa.
Yeah.
And if you follow the Father's Rights Movement on Facebook page, you are very familiar with that last name because he pretty much signs off on every comment that you put on that page with Rosa. Ken, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you guys for having me. That's awesome to be season 2, episode 1. So that's cool in itself.
Oh man, yeah, we're bringing it for you. We really planned this out. I think we're gonna have a good time. It's kind of fun. Ryan and I spent the last year defining what the Dadvocacy podcast was about, and showing that we're not a part of the He-Man Woman Haters Club. Ryan would be alfalfa. I'd be what? Spunky? Spanky. There we go. So the environment we kind of create is about being dadvocates, being humble and wanting what's best for our children. And when we saw your platform and checked everything out, it's exactly that. It's not about the individual person. It's about what's best for the children and the 50-50, which comes from that because fathers need to be present.
Absolutely.
So, Ken, you're one of the founders of the Father's Rights Movement, right?
I am not. So the Father's Rights Movement got started like 2011, 2012. His name's Tom Fiddler. He's from Alaska. He got ran over by the family courts up there. He started a Facebook group called the Father's Rights Movement, and it blew up on him. It got so big that he couldn't handle it. So then he brought in all these people, and there was a period there we had like this toxic image, negativity. People would say that just because they belong to our Facebook page, they would go into a state legislator and then threaten, the removal of the legislator if they didn't put forth the equal share parenting bill and then throw our name out. And so we were banned in a couple of state houses. And so they signed, they signed me on to help clean up the image. And then we got a new executive director, and we're restructuring our board. And so we're as big as we've ever been, and it's just going to keep getting bigger.
Man, that's awesome. Okay, so we've got that piece, and then there's Equal and Not Less Project. Is that right also?
E&L, Equal Not Less Project. So, my doing these broadcasts and just having the reach that we do, we have legislators that reach out to us. Everybody reaches out to us just like you guys did. So I met Amanda with the Equal Not Less Project, I want to say about a year or so ago. And they have a niche that no one else in the shared parenting community is doing. And what it is the fathers, we don't know how to navigate courtrooms. We don't know how to file our own paperwork. We don't know how to file paternity petitions. And so we get ran over in these family courts because we don't know what we're doing. Some of us can't afford attorneys. So basically, if you're too poor to afford your kids, then you get as much justice as you can afford with your own children.
Yeah.
No, we're familiar with that.
Absolutely.
we're not immune to that issue in North Idaho.
That's pretty common, I think, everywhere, right?
Yeah. So after, I've known her for a while and we've done some work together and we've been behind the scenes together and everything. I guess they all got together. For some reason, they put me on their board of directors. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty prestigious. So that's my first board of directors. I'm proud to be there. But the Father's Rights Movement is the key that unlocks all these doors because it's such a large platform, such a large community that, So I'm super stoked about everything we do because what I went through 7 years ago up until last year, no parent, no child should ever have to go through.
Yeah. If you don't mind, kind of kicking that off, you want to tell us a little bit about your story and how you kind of ended up in this role, like as, kind of the mouthpiece, I guess, for the Father's Rights Movement, or part of the mouthpiece, I should say.
I don't think anybody's mouth is larger than mine. So
I don't know. You're the media manager, okay? So
I don't think anybody's mouthpiece is larger than mine. So they're like, hey man, since you don't ever shut up here, we're going to give you this media manager thing and you run with it from there. But so my personal story is that I had 2 older kids. One is in one's 25, one's right around 20, getting ready to turn 21. And, myself and their mom, we got divorced way back in the 2000s. And we still have a good co-parenting relationship to this day. We still talk. We're still Facebook friends. We can still go kick it and get a beer every now and again. And so my oldest son is a Missouri State Trooper, one of the most prestigious law enforcement agencies in the United States. And, for his entire high school career, he lived with me. And you got to go through all these psychological things. So that proves that I'm not raising monsters. But then I got into a relationship with my second wife. We were together for 13 years. And she found, it's a joke. And some people get aggravated about it. But I always like to say that she found somebody uglier than me and decided that was the path she wanted to take. So she was not a co-parent. Out of the 7 years, there was a good span of that. Probably over more than 5 of those years, I haven't seen my children. I still haven't seen my 17-year-old son in about 3 years now.
Oh my God!
Oh, smokes!
And I have a court order for every other weekend. But if you're female, then you don't have to abide by those court orders. Only as the male.
Contempt. What's that? Yeah, for a female.
And you better not skip that child support payment. So, to prove a point that this is a sexist, money-driven industry, I stopped paying child support when she stopped letting me see my son. And I made the police reports, because we're destroyed from not having the proper paperwork and we don't know what to file. I self-educated myself on filing the interference with parental custodies, filing the modifications, filing the contempt of courts and all of that stuff. And, they said, well, she's the custodial mom. Sucks to suck, dude, but it is what it is. So they did felony prosecute me at the same time for failure to pay child support because I refused. Obviously, I'm not going to take a felony, but I wanted to prove the point that this is all about money, not about the kids' best interest. So even though I still haven't seen my son in 3 years, I paid that off all in one lump sum. And I'm not going to take a felony just to prove a point. But yeah. So, and then past that, I had 2 with her, 2 kids with her. And then past that, I have 2 younger little girls, 7 and 5, well-rounded, great human beings. They're all great human beings, but the kids in the middle, the 2 kids in the middle, you can see all of these societal things that they say is attributed to coming from a fatherless home or a high conflict divorce and that type of things with the behavioral issues and the bad grades. And that's not to say that my 2 kids aren't absolutely phenomenal human beings. They're just placed in a situation that they can't deal with. They don't have the mental capacity to overcome those things. And it set them back in life is what it did. So that's kind of my story.
So where did the father's rights movement kind of enter the picture? Like when did you jump into the group?
Perfect. So I started, you come out of court and you're like, wait a minute, what in the world is going on? Like none of this makes sense. This is the United States of America, red, white, and blue, justice for all. And then you walk into a family court and they're like, I'm sorry, you were born a man. We're going to discriminate against you 83% of the time. So just in searching, I found the father's rights movement. And they use their crisis line. That's what the father's rights movement is known for, is we have the crisis line. Sometimes there's a male stigma that we don't want to call the suicide prevention line, but if we call it a crisis line, we're the second largest used, crisis line in that aspect, because dudes don't have a problem calling something that says the father's rights movement crisis line. So
that makes sense. Yeah.
We save lives. That's our number one goal. And then once we get past that, then we can work on legislation and other types of aspects. So I found them in 16 or so when I first started going through this. And then let's see, we're in 21. So I guess I took over the media aspect of the father's rights movement right at the end of 19, going into 20. It's been a great run.
No, that's a pretty crazy story. I mean, like, how many dads that listen to this podcast, and myself included, I know Tristan's probably ran into it a little bit. I mean, we've had our headbutts with the family court system. And I don't know if you're familiar with like Tristan and I's story, but I mean, we're pretty rare that we're dads that have majority custody of our children. But we're not immune to seeing it either. Like, I mean, we could have full, probably have a great argument for it. And that's not the case. I mean, I got told in my case, I'm just a dad. And that was like the giant slap in the face that a judge telling, somebody that he's willing to give a dad 85% custody, but you're not going to get full because you're a dad. I mean, so, we advocate that, we're on the rarity side that we get to see our kids a little bit more than others, but it doesn't mean that we're out of the fight. We don't have skin in the game, and we can't fight for those that are trying to get their kids. And we've had some awesome guests come on the show that have, barely see their kids. And, that's where we kind of fell into this. One of my good friends was going through a really hard divorce, and he stumbled across your page. And he's like, Ryan, dude, you got to check this out, man. Like this page is like a life changer. And he was pulling stuff out that he was using in his case and all this stuff. And he ended up getting 50-50 coming out of the back end of it. And that's amazing. It was amazing. Yeah.
That's totally
amazing. So I've been pretty transparent on there. I sued the state of Missouri's court actors for what they did in my case. And I've posted a lot of that stuff for other guys too.
Sorry.
That lawsuit's in like 13 or 14 states that I know of. They took it and they tweaked it and they filed their own things. Unfortunately, we had the hearing, and basically what the state of Missouri's position is it doesn't matter how many crimes my GALs and court actors committed. It only matters that they work for the state, and therefore they're quasi-judicial immune. So we'll see what the federal courts have to say about that. But, I'm pretty transparent in that. I put all of my filings up. I've helped walk people through that. And, everybody's like, oh, the father's rights movement, that's such a dirty term. But in reality, like 40% of our followers are moms that are married to their new significant other. They see how he's getting ran over by the court system. They're the children that grew up missing their fathers because, some judge told them, oh, you can only see your dad every other weekend. And then the mom didn't abide by that. And all of them come on there and they say, what these family courts did to me and my dad was not cool. It was not in my best interest. It ruined my life. Now I'm in, trauma counseling for the rest of my life. So we don't want that to continue through the generations. But I've been around with the family courts and everything. So
it seems like you've made your rounds quite a bit. It really, and it is generational. I think that's part of the issue. It feels like that we've got these elderly judges in the court that never really had influence in their children's lives because they figured, the role was I'm a man, I'm providing for my family. All I do is work. Here's the money, and she handles everything else. Like, and it seems like they're still feeling that way when we know that even in woke culture, which we loathe, but at least now there's a marker for men to come out and go, look, we're tired of the old rules. We're tired of the rules and how you're slapping crap on us. We want to be parents. We want to be involved, and we want to make sure there's a difference in our children's lives.
Unfortunately, we have canceled men in general. If you do anything, do anything that's manly, it's toxic masculinity. No, it's not. If you do anything, that men should be proud of, we're part of the patriarchal oppressive society. If you want to have equal shared parenting in your children's lives, and we're not asking for special rights, we're asking for equal rights. But if you want to have equal shared parenting, it is, well, you can have some custody if you can prove you're not abusive. That's not how our legal systems are working. And so, we're having to overcome all these societal stigmas and everything against men in general, but fathers as well. And the unfortunate thing is that you can attribute over 70 negative behavioral statistics to children, teen pregnancies, illicit drug use, suicide. 63% of all children's suicides come from a fatherless home. There's something to be said about removing dads. We have destroyed the integrity of the family because they just released a study that said that only 18% of people are in a nuclear family type relationship now. Yeah. That's not even 1 out of 5. That's less than 1 out of 5.
And wasn't there that I thought there was a statistic that said 80% of rapists came from a fatherless home also.
81 or 83% of all rapists come from a fatherless home. They have issues with the fact that their father was removed. Their mother was either abusive to them or didn't let them see their dad. But yes, almost 80+% of rapists come from a fatherless home.
Yeah.
Insanity.
That's
I mean,
yeah,
that's
really
insanity. Good freaking Lord.
And we've gone over some of the statistics on the show too. Like, I mean, you can go all the way down to like the wage gap is attributed to fathers being present in the home. That if you have a dad present at home, you're like, I think it's like 37% more likely to earn above the median average in the United States as far as wage. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that gets like linked to just having that stability within the household. And you talked about the toxic masculinity, to where we kind of turn it. It's like, no, we've been toxically emasculated. We've been neutered by society to like, no, it has to look a certain way. And if you're too strong of a dad, like, no, you need to back that off a little bit because, we need to have that more softer touch and a little bit less discipline or whatever it is or structure. And gosh, it's screwing our kids over. It's running rampant through the schools. I mean, I could see, I used to be a teacher and, we see it. It's awful. It's terrible.
I mean, the flip side is that feminism has become more toxic also.
Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like they literally just flipped it. And the women went like, oh, you know what? Now that you're soft and sensitive, now we're going to be the alphas and try and dominate you with our testosterone, toxic femininity. But it just destroys the entire family dynamic.
Yeah.
Well, 100 years ago, we needed men. Men stepped up. It wasn't women. Men stepped up and we said, what you're doing to them women, they need rights too. They got to have rights too. Yep. And then in the 60s, we stepped up and we said, the way you treat the people of color, Black people, you can't do that. Yep. No community can ever fix this without another community getting involved. So now you're starting to see all of the women coming forward and saying, what you're doing to fathers is not in anybody's best interest. You're only doing this for profit for the state, for the family court, and it can't continue. But, the type of things that this breeds is a lot of people don't understand. They're like, oh, well, that doesn't affect me. I'm never going to get a divorce or anything. Well, let me tell you how it affects you.
Oh, man.
The Vegas shooter killed over 500 and something people, shot over, 1,000 people. I mean, there was astronomical carnage and death in that. Guess what? He's from a fatherless home. It's not normal behavior to think that you should shoot up a concert full of human beings and that be okay. That doesn't come, so there's something to be said that when this family bond is broken, things go totally haywire in these people's minds that you can grow up and think, you know what, tonight's a good night just to kill almost 1,000 people.
And it's something that, an epidemic that we face here is, having that thought process of like, today's a good night to just go and end my own life. I mean, North Idaho has one of the highest percentages, I think, per capita in the United States of male suicide between the ages of 14 and 37. I mean, it's crazy how bad it is here. And I know it's bad across the country, but
part of that's because there is a large veteran community here also.
Yeah. I mean, there's the veteran suicide. Then there's also our teen suicide rate is crazy high. And, going back and looking at some of the statistics that have come through the schools, therein lies the problem again, is that it's a split household. It's some sort of disruption has taken place within the home. And, that we as dads got to do something. Like, I mean, we've got to fight back because we're losing our kids to this now too. Not only are we losing our kids in the physical aspect of like, we don't get access to them, but we're losing our kids' lives over this stuff too.
Yeah, the teen death suicide rate is too high. Almost all school shooters come from some type of a fatherless home. There's so much carnage that comes from these type of things. A lot of people don't understand or know that, they're like, oh, well, he's from the father's rights movement. He's just bashing on all the moms. No, Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber, was from a one-parent household. Yep. He was from a father. I don't know if his mother was inactive because she didn't want to be. I don't know if the father forced her out. There's not a lot of research on that. But I've studied that case all the way back down. And from the age of 10, his mom is missing somehow. It's not normal behavior to grow up and kill 168 people with a truck bomb and think that that's some type of anyway logical thinking. So once again, we can trace these issues back to all of these people have this early childhood trauma, and then their mental abilities to function in rational society to not think it's okay to kill 168 people is affected.
It delays our coping mechanisms. I mean, this goes to the biological level. But I don't know if we want to.
No, it's okay.
We can stay on this topic for a long time too.
Let's keep going. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
we're fine.
And you mentioned like the following is a majority. Like you guys have a huge following of women, and we've noticed like on our show too, majority of our listenership is women.
I would assume we're about 55%, honestly.
Yeah, it's actually probably a little bit higher. I don't know if it's because we're two attractive single dudes. I don't know.
You're running a little bit higher than us. We have stats, and we can show that about 40% of our audience is women.
That's awesome. And see, like you would think like you would have the reputation, like you said, like just this woman bashing page, but it's not. If you really get to the roots of what you're fighting for, the 50-50 parenthood, like who shouldn't be in favor of that? Like if it's going to benefit the kids, like who's not going to fight for that, or who's not going to argue for that issue? Obviously there are the bad actors on the fringe that you've got to acknowledge that they do exist. But for the general part of it, I mean, like I've seen great. Yeah, go ahead.
It affects mom too, because, okay, you get in a relationship with dad and he got dumped. You know, women file for divorce 83% of the time. No, women file for divorce 83% of the time. They're granted custody at a statistical, factual rate from 80+% all the way up to almost 90% since 1990. And there's some laws that went into that or whatever, but we've never dropped below the 80 percentile that moms get full custody of children in family courts here in the United States of America. So you have these women that they get with a great guy, and she's over there saying, oh, he's an abuser, he did all this. And then she's saying, no, the hell he doesn't. I live with him 24/7. You're lying. And the only reason why you're doing that is because you wanted the control of the custody of the kids and the house and the assets. And then, then her life is harder because they've got to support not only their household and their kids, but they've got to support the other lady's household and kids through child support and all this stuff. And so, I think that's why we have such a high turnout of these women coming forward, because they're like, wait a minute. I'm with this dude you said was a piece of trash. He's a great dude. He's a great father. And what you're doing to him is not okay. Now our kids are suffering. So these are kids that aren't even involved in it. And then they get railroaded because, the family courts are more interested in profit than the best interest of anybody's kids.
Then I was watching your guys' podcast earlier today. You had a Facebook Live on, and you had an attorney from North Carolina on the podcast with an attorney from California, and they were talking back and forth. And the gal from North Carolina was mentioning, she's like, the majority of the cases that we see of people advocating now for fathers' rights issues are kids that went through divorce, that got a hold of their parents' case studies and caseloads, and they went through the documentation, said, this isn't right. Like, my dad, I grew up in a household, I was screwed out of this because you just like, why? Like, where is the justification for all of this? And, like, do you think a lot of this also is just due to like men being apprehensive about speaking their feelings? I mean, women are a little bit better at speaking out about things than men are, but we're obviously finding our voice nowadays.
So it comes in a few parts. Okay. So my daughter from the high conflict custody case where mom just thought I was a piece of trash, shouldn't have anything to do with my kids. She's 19 now. She called me a few months ago. She said, I just can't handle this anymore. Come get me. So I went and picked her up. And at 19, they're old enough to start seeing the paperwork and the things that happened in court. And you hand her the paperwork or the questions that she asked, and you hand her just the paperwork so that she can make her own conclusions and draw her own analysis and basis of. And she goes, oh, my God, we were always told that you didn't pay child support, not this exuberant amount every month. Mom makes almost $100,000 more a year. Why are you paying her child support? Well, that's a great question. Why am I paying her child support? Because it made life harder on everybody. The kid's never seen any of that money, and that's fine. But then there are other things that you hand her, and the restraining order attempts that my ex-wife had tried. I think I've had she got one successfully before I learned how to file my own paperwork and do my own things. And then I think I beat either 4 or 5 other ones. And then on the last one, after 4 or 5 attempts on the last one, the judge told her, don't let me see your face in this court again, because now I'm starting to get aggravated. But what that did is every time she went down to file those restraining orders, it kept me away from my children for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more months. And then it cost me $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a lawyer to go in there and argue why we shouldn't have a piece of paper in place So yes, those programs were set up to protect people in the beginning, but now they're being abused just to keep people away from their children. How do I have a relationship with my children when I can have my door kicked down and be arrested and be killed or go to prison or jail for breaking a piece of paper that says I can't contact my own children?
Yeah. I was going to mention, like, you're probably familiar with the silver bullet defense then, because that's kind of what you're talking about. I've got a guy in my men's group that, I'm meeting with regularly, and he's newly divorced, but his soon-to-be ex is using this against him. She's made some pretty outlandish claims that are very easily refutable. But due to the laws in the state of Idaho, they have to investigate. And then they have to let her present the evidence, but they don't put a timeline on it. So he hasn't seen his kids now in already a month, and he's probably got a timeline. He's not going to see them until probably around February, which is awful for no reason at all. There's no provable evidence there to keep him from his kids. So why is it so important that burden of proof, though, be put on the state?
Yeah, so he's going to have two options, right? He's going to either have to get an attorney, he's going to have to go to court, and he's going to either potentially lose his life liberty. And what I mean by that is, in those restraining orders, they put you can't own a firearm. You can't have a firearm around you. They put that you can't see your own children. They put that you can't go within 500 feet of their school. You can't go within 500 feet of her. You can't be, they tell you if you're in a gas station or a grocery store and she walks in with your own children, if you speak to them, you'll go to prison. You better turn around and run out the back door and leave. So he's faced with the option of he's going to lose his entire life. He's going to be branded as some type of outcast of society. And then, it affects other things. Maybe he's involved with church. Churches look at that stuff. You can't volunteer around any type of a child anymore because you got a restraining order in place. And it's all over what they call the silver bullet. So those are his two options. He either has to beat that or his whole life is going to be ruined. Now, here's the problem. If he does beat that, absolutely zero, and I do mean zero, will happen to her for making up those false allegations. Why isn't she going to jail? She tried to destroy a man's life.
She's literally kidnapping her kids. Yeah.
She should go to jail for that. So the silver bullet is they even have a legal term for it, is that you want to get divorced. You don't want to be around your significant other. You walk in and your attorney tells you, this is a dog fight. Whichever one of you kills the other one first, you're going to get custody of the kids and the assets. So the easiest way for you to do that, and we actually have videos from one of the attorney generals of Texas. So she's like an underling of Ken Paxton on a YouTube video coaching a room full of lawyers to use a restraining order as the tool to gain custody of the divorce. Wow. Like, they're all preaching this stuff. Mm-hmm. So the family court judiciary has moved away from what it was supposed to be, and they're turning this into a winner-take-all, kill the other opponent. It's a dogfight. Somebody's going to lose the kids. If you don't want it to be you got to throw a bunch of dirt on her. And so it's just a gladiator system out here. Like, Rome didn't go away. We just call it family court now.
Yeah, man, it's amazing that rapists, murderers, pedophiles, whatever, they all get innocent until proven guilty. And immediately the husband's guilty.
Yep.
In family court, we say you're guilty until you're proven more guilty, and then you can maybe someday prove you're innocent. But here's the thing: if your buddy doesn't have any kind of money, and that judge railroads him, and he just says, "Well," and here's how they did me on the first one. They said, "Here's the statement that makes all your constitutional rights go away: to err on the side of caution." So that doesn't mean that there's any type of proof. That doesn't mean that the allegations she alleged were true or that there was a danger. It means to err on the side of caution. We're going to go ahead and revoke all your rights to your kids, your life, and everything else, and then we'll sort this out later. And that's exactly what they did to me. And the problem with that is I could never get out from underneath of that first restraining order. That's all they wanted to bring up in there, was that I was a convicted child abuser now, or whatever it was, they were trying to paint me as this unfit father, because they had that restraining order in place that never should have been put in place in the beginning. So what if you're poor and you can't afford to file an appeal? An appeal costs you 10, 15, 20 grand to get an appellate lawyer. Not all lawyers will even do it. So it's a special type of lawyer. And if you don't know how to do that type of thing, you're SOL.
Yeah. I know we don't want to take the tone of being depressing, but this is such.
It is.
And it's we talked about a couple episodes ago, but like this is an issue, like, and it's leading to other things too. I mean, gosh, we could look at, I know we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the Chad Reed thing kind of has like a derivative of this too.
Mhm.
And I mean, this family court system being so incredibly broken and, you know, unequal. I mean, like, we'll just flat call what it is. I mean, it's a sham at times. And with it being built in that way, you know, where does we start? Like, you got to start somewhere, right? It's like eating an elephant. How do you do it? You got to take it one bite at a time. So where are you taking with like the father's rights movement and the equal, not less? Like, where are you starting with this? Like, what services are you providing in the initial intake to help some of these dads overcome like what looks like a daunting, you know, almost impossible task?
So, you know, we have different primary focuses for both organizations. The Father's Rights Movement, we want to keep you alive until the next morning. And then once you get your sea legs back underneath you, then we want you to continue swimming. You know, we don't want you to drown. And unfortunately, you know, men are 4 times more likely to kill themselves than women.
Yep.
We can attribute a whole lot of things to that. We've got 22 veterans a day that kill themselves. We've got statistics on fathers. What we're not studying is what's the, you know, people don't leave a suicide note to say, I killed myself because I can't see my children in family court. Yeah. So as best as I can tell, and it's just a guess or a preponderance, we're losing about 39 and a half fathers per day in the United States of America because they don't have family access issues. That's a Kenneth Rosa stat. You can't find that anywhere else. It's just things that I've compiled and tabulated. And so there's no scientific research.
If that's what it is, that wouldn't shock me at all.
Yeah, not at all.
Right. But so that's the father's rights main goal and purpose. And then, you know, we work with different aspects on things. The Equal Not Less Than Project, you know, their aspect is to help fathers educate themselves on how you file this if you're too poor or are getting railroaded in a sham of a court. So you want to fix this? I can fix this tomorrow. Question number 1. If the other parent dies, will the other parent have custody? If the other parent dies, will the other parent have custody? For instance, I haven't seen my children. I haven't seen my children in 7 years, right? Mm-hmm. But if my ex-wife were to die today, I could go pick up my son because there's no retainers from the Division of Family Services. There's nobody saying that I wouldn't have access to my child. I just don't have access because it's locked.
Yeah.
So if the other parent died, would the non-custodial parent have custody? If the answer is yes, 50-50, bam, already solved all that. Number 2, cameras in the courtroom. We have all these backwoods meetings going on in the judges' chambers, and what we get is you get these cliques of people. So the guardian ad litem and the therapist and the judge, and you know they all like to run in a pack because we all want to be associated with our peers. You were excited to have me on today. I was excited to see you guys because we're all in the same Equal Share Parenting Dadvocacy Center, and so we all want to know each other. We all want to, you know, be part of the boys and stuff like that. Well, that's what these lawyers and judges do. And then they start running these crime mob syndicates to where they're just fleecing everybody that comes into their courtroom jurisdictions. And if you don't side with or have the right lawyer or have the right therapist or have the right judge, then you get, you know, pushed out of your kids' lives. And it can't be that way. So we need an equal shared parenting across the board. And we can work backwards from there if there's some type of abuse. You know, we don't want anybody picking up a child that has 10 DWIs.
Yeah. So,
but I am of the opinion that instead of having punitive family courts, we should have rehabilitative family courts. Maybe the dude or the mom needs help beating that alcohol addiction. They shouldn't be removed from their child's lives. They should be carefully helped to better themselves to where they can still be an active part of the kids' lives.
Yeah,
agreed.
You know, you know, you can take that down the road too. Of like, if that person can't beat that and it becomes an issue of safety with the kids, I mean, then you have the reason for removal, right? You can take the kid from that parent and have a justification for it when he endangers the kid's life.
That sounds a lot like what Greece is doing right now. Also, have you talked about Greece yet? And their co-parenting laws?
Yeah. So Greece, as far as I know, and anyone's welcome to challenge me on this, but I keep up with almost everything that goes on in the entire world on this stuff. Greece is the first country I know that passed from here on out, we're just going to do equal shared parenting. And you have to prove why that parent shouldn't be there. So here in the United States, we call that evidence standard, clear and convincing evidence. You can't just walk in anymore with a silver bullet and say, I don't like dad, he's abusive, and he can't be around the kids. The last state here in the States to do that was Arkansas. Arkansas passed a 50-50 equal shared parenting with a clear and convincing evidence standard, and it had a bunch of bells and whistles that go with it to protect kids. But Greece did something similar to that. And so now the whole country is that way. We'll start to see other countries follow that, as it should be. Just because you're divorcing your co-parent doesn't mean you're divorcing your kids.
Yeah. Because I mean, like what we see, especially in like the state that we live in, it starts out, all right, we're going to start 70-30. Okay. So if you really suck, we're going to just keep taking that away and you're going to end up with like 90-10 or 100 and you get 0. And to where like they're saying like, no, we're going to start at 50-50. And I think that's the fair standard is like, no, we're going to look at this like we're going to start middle ground, like 50-50.
Absolutely.
And then now we're going to work backwards from like, what's the end goal? Now you have to show me how do we get there? And you start having like, instead of getting tunnel vision of like, we're just going to win. How do I get from A to Z with like as much as possible? Now you get into that argument of like, yeah, no, I wouldn't have it as shared as possible, but we both have to be able to prove that like we're capable of that. Like that's realistic.
I think it's more that you're having, yes, we went 50-50, but if there's an issue, now prove the issue.
Yeah.
Or have the court prove the issue, have somebody monitor that, I mean, whatever kind of counseling needs to be there, because we clearly don't want real abusers, right?
No.
and true actual abusers abusing either the children because the mom's gone now, or having the mother have to interact with her abuser, proven, of course, right? So it's kind of Greece's rule is tough now because from what I read, they don't have an actual premise that goes, hey, yes, he's an abuser. We've proven that. Like, I guess maybe in the back end they prove it. I was reading through it. It was pretty tough to figure out exactly what they were trying to do, other than 50-50, which I love, right? Because on the top end, it sounds great. And I like to play devil's advocate in this one. It's just kind of fun.
Well, here's the thing. I'll let you play devil's advocate. Let's say that you don't want the kids in an abusive situation.
Yep.
They're 54% more likely to be abused at mom's house than they are at dad's house.
Yes, they are.
They're 71% more likely to be killed, neglected, or abused at mom's house by her next significant other than anyone they'll ever meet in their entire damn life. 71%.
Wow.
Yep.
Most of these... And so they didn't like the way that these were being reported, right? You used to get these from the government themselves. It's called the Child Maltreatment Reports. They have one every single year. It used to be mom with her significant other, father with their significant other. And then, it would be father by themselves, mother by themselves. So then 13, 14, they switched it up. Now it's just parent with a significant other, because they didn't like the way these statistics were going. And it's not the dad you need to be worried about. It's mom's next significant other that is most likely to do the harm, the abuse, the neglect.
Wasn't the neglect from dad and his significant other like substantially like lower than even median? Like it was like way the other direction?
29.1 for neglect, 29.2 for 29.1 for the neglect, and 28.9 for most likely to be killed by dad and the other significant other.
It's amazing to think that if every person knew these stats, you'd assume there'd be change instantly. Why would you even go, oh no, let's hold on to what we have with these stats?
Money. And that plays into the domestic violence industry, because we always say, well, we don't want women around their abusers. They did a study in 2007 that came out of Harvard. You're more likely to be abused. The person that is more likely to create the physical abuse first is the woman. It was like 70%. They redid that study so many times that you can't even find the study now unless you have old, screenshots from it, because they've taken it down, because it goes against the narrative. We had a certain senator now happens to be the United States president, that introduced legislation called the Violence Against Women's Act. And I'm not saying that back in the day, the 60s, 70s, the 80s, maybe that wasn't necessary. But what we've seen is that the money industry, the federal grants, the federal money, the incentives for that stuff, that's why you can walk into a family court, get hit with a silver bullet. They automatically give it out because they need those stats to prove that abuse is going on. Well, we had to issue 10 restraining orders to keep this money flowing, when 9 of those restraining orders weren't necessary. And the way we know that is that the DFS reports, only 17% of called in abuse reports to the Division of Family Services are substantiated, less than 1 out of 4.
Wow.
So we have a society that reports these things, and then it's unfounded. They don't take the kids from the parents that they need to take them from. They leave them with parents that, like the lady in Texas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They said, your boyfriend, here we go again. So the boyfriend beat the 8-year-old child to death, and they left the dead body in there with the 3 brothers for over a year. And the reason for that, when they arrested mom, is because she didn't want to lose the state assistance and the child support.
Holy smokes.
That's just disgusting. No, when I read that story, I literally wept. It was freaking disgusting.
Yeah, we've incentivized all of these bad behaviors, these bad things that are being inflicted upon our children, just so people can be greedy, whether it be the family courts. I'm of the opinion 50-50 shared parenting. You support them at your house, I'll support them at my house, and we're not going to redistribute anybody's wealth back to the other parent.
Completely, yeah, 100%. And we had the conversation a while ago when we were trying to justify how much child support you would pay, and it was hard to figure out.
Yeah,
because we know where the money doesn't go, and it's not to the kid, and that's clear. And so it's 60 plus 65 billion, something like that, is the actual the number is somewhere on there. Is that right?
So that's you're going into the fire, into the forest. It's all on fire. Everything's covered in gasoline when you get into that. So when you get into the child support, let's start at the Form 14. Form 14 is used in 42 of the 50 states. The Form 14 is favored that if you have a custodial split of 50-50 time, someone still has to pay 14% to the other parent. So the Form 14 itself is already lopsided, that somebody has to make up a 14% indiscrepancy, no matter if there's a 50-50 shared parenting or not. You go from there and you get into what's called Title 4D. Title 4D is the federal incentive monetized program that they installed in the 1960s, 70s, 80s. The legislation that gave it teeth was in the 1990s by Bill Clinton signed off on it. Everybody's like, oh, it's the Democrats. Yeah, well, who was his Congress? Newt Gingrich's Republican Congress. So let's put the blame where it goes. It's on both parties. And you guys saw a chance to fleece parents, because what they were doing was they were running around and they were chasing what's called the deadbeat dad. And then they figured out that if you add all of the child custody cases to it, they put 19.5 million child custody cases into the Title 4D folder in 1994 or 6. There was 2 bills there. Anyway, one of those 2 years, they threw all of the child custody things into that. And so that gave the state incentive to come after you, suspend your driver's license, put you in prison for being unable to pay a debt. We outlawed debtor's prison in 1890, but we just now call it child support. Yeah. And that program has gotten away. So the federal incentive program, everybody's like, oh, it's a dollar for dollar thing. No, it's really convoluted. So the state turns in time spent to collect the money from the dad. Even if he makes his payment every month on time, they still turn in an hourly bill to the federal government for the child support collection efforts. And then the federal, we've never seen a government agency ever bill for more hours than what they used or nothing. But then the child support, then the federal government sends them a check to reimburse them 66 cents on the dollar of all of the money that they spent, which is how you get counties with 4 or 5 prosecutors that they don't do anything but prosecute people that are behind on child support. It's how you get the child support enforcement agency. All those people are funded through this federal program, And so you get all of these people that need to get their girlfriend and their other dude a job. And so, they keep these collection agencies going. But that program pays out $50 to $60 billion to the states. That is an old statistic.
Good
We're
Lord.
up to $90 billion. Here's the best part, though. A lot of people don't know this. If the state meets enough parameters to collect enough dollars, you have to collect one more dollar than you did the year before. And there's some other things that are in place. Then there's a bonus that gets chopped up in between the states. That does not have to be spent on child support enforcement. That could be spent on anything that they want to spend. And Ken Paxton, the Attorney General of Texas, is on record saying that they fund 65% of the Texas government off of the child support reimbursement payment. 65% of the entire Texas government is funded off of child support.
It's unbelievable.
How is it? I mean, how is it even
legal?
Yeah, I mean, like it's not right. We know that, but apparently they're doing it. So that on record, how is he not just put through the ringer right now about that?
Because everybody, once we throw it out there, they bragged. Ken Paxton bragged that in 2020, Texas collected $4.3 billion in child support and redistributed to moms in the pandemic. The worst year they've ever had in the history of the United States. We collected $4.3 billion in Texas. We collected 2.2 in Ohio. Billion in child support. We're talking with a B, not an M. Billion that they paid out. Then they get repaid on all of those things. That's how they're funding these state governments off of it. But when you start talking about, we're collecting all this child support, society's sitting over there like clapping. Oh, yeah, well, at least these dads are finally taking care of their kids. They don't realize that it's an extortion scam going on.
Yep. Well, I mean, so even though, I paid child support on my daughter till of course she turned 18, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even though I was paying child support, when she would come to my house, I'd spend $500+ on, you need clothes. I can clearly see you're running out of jeans. Let's go shopping.
Yep.
Let's get you what you need for school. Let's take care of this. Let's take care of yourself. And we're like, my bills are on top of that. And most fathers, I'm assuming, are doing exactly what I did. We're taking care of what we have to take care of and handling our business. I couldn't figure out where the money was going.
Well, that's what we're doing. The father is being made to prop up both homes. Mom gets that little child support check, and the more money she makes, the less child support money she's going to get. There's that, they actually did a study. Emma Johnson, she's one of the moms groups. I can't remember her mom's group's name, but she's for shared parenting. And they did a study. You're 31% more likely as a woman to make a six-figure income if you share parenting with your ex-co-partner, because you have time to go back to school, get an education. You have time to build these relationships, to be in the corporate world. You have time to, every other week, you don't have the kids, so you have time to go out and get a high-paying job. You have time to do things for you. You want to know why moms statistically are 54% more likely to abuse the children? Because the state's forcing all of the parental time onto them. They only get a break from the kid 4 days a month.
Burnout.
Yeah.
I know.
You kind of get your mind blown every time it gets checked. You're like, oh my gosh, there's more,
So I don't want to say I'm going to change the subject, but I know that, you've hinted at it, like the bad actors, right? I know that you are not afraid to shy away from calling out crappy dads. You might take a little heat for it too sometimes, but you'll see the comments section sometimes, but like it has to be done, right? We do the same thing. We'll call out the bad actors too.
Yep.
So with a group as big as yours in that movement, why is it so important to call out these bad dads? Because you don't want to get the stigma of like, oh no, dude, like we just want to get you to pay less child support. Like that's not the goal. The goal is to get you more parenting time. If you get more parenting time, guess what the side effect is? You pay less child support. Like
in theory.
Yeah. But like
the 90s and in the, we didn't have as much information. We didn't have a way for us to link up and do this podcast from California all the way out to here to St. Louis, Missouri. So the information technology is out there now, and that's helped us to link up. You see when these policies all started with this Title 4D thing, with the monetized incentive of the removal of the father. You know, we used to hear about in the 80s and 90s, you know, dad would have to be in the house, but then he'd have to sneak out when the welfare caseworker came by, because if he was there, you know, then all the benefits would stop. So we incentivized the removal of the father for all these decades. The Black community absolutely got destroyed. When these policies started, they were at 23% fatherless homes. They're now at 77% of fatherless kids in the Black community.
Holy smokes, man. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's just
there's 26 million kids that haven't seen their father in over a fiscal year, right? I spent well over, after my divorce, I spent about somewhere around like $37,000, $42,000 getting divorced. She spent like $92,000 getting divorced. The only thing we were arguing over was parental time. I got I didn't even get every other crappy weekend. I got like 12 hours, you know, one weekend, 12 hours. No, let's see. 36 one weekend, 36 the next. So I got 72 hours a month with my kids unsupervised. So I'm so dangerous to my own kids that they gave me 72 hours a month unsupervised. I had to pay her child support, even though she made $30,000 more a year.
Wow.
Okay, fast forward. I spent all these hundreds of $1,000s, you know, trying to be an active participant in my children's lives. I never asked to be in the statistic that I haven't seen my children in 3 years. As a matter of fact, I've been in and out of every freaking courtroom there is to be in to see my children, but yet I still haven't seen my son in 3 years. You're not going to tell me that 26 million dads were just like, yo, I'm done with that. There's actually a statistic out there that says about year 3, dad gets tired of all the chaos. He gets tired of being drugged back and forth into court. He gets tired of filing the contempts and the judge won't do anything. He gets tired of calling the sheriff's and the police department, and they won't enforce his parental custody time because he shows up and she's not there. And so dads walk away around year 3. They just resolve themselves to pay their child support and go on with their lives because that's what they got to do. Otherwise, what else are you going to do? Join the
financial, you can't even afford it anyway. Yeah. So
join the 39 and a half fathers that kill themselves a day. I mean, you know, at some point you got to have some peace of mind. So I don't believe any of these dads. You know, I believe it's an outlier fringe of people that don't want to be involved with their kids. And for that, I can also say that one of my best friends growing up, I grew up in Kansas City. Can't tell her nothing. But, you know, he's a Black community father, and him and his gal were together for, I want to say like 2 years. They had a baby, month 4. The kid was, you know, on her 4th month in existence. Mom walks in and she's like, yo, dog, this ain't for me. I'm out. And she turned around and left. And he's seen or heard from her in 4 years. The child's going to be 4 this year. So sometimes people don't want to be parents. I get that. But for the most part, the 26 million missing their father isn't because they want to be. It's because the society and the court system and the gatekeeping, parental alienating moms forced them to be. I never wanted to be in that statistic.
Mm-hmm. And we went on last episode, I think.
Yeah, you talked about that.
We talked about a young cat. He was in his 20s, still like 23, right? I think is what it was.
23 years old.
23 years old. His baby is 2 months old. The mom left at 3 weeks. And she clearly said, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to be this. And man, I mean, you know, I think there needs to be a greater and a deeper conversation about the deadbeat mom, because they're there, or the moms that are only in it for the money. And in my situation, at one point in time, they wanted to relook at my child support. So I called them and I said, look, I'm the custodial parent of 2 boys. If I have to spend $700 a month on my one girl, we're going to be in the street. So that's okay with you? And they said, look, literally, you need to talk to your congressman because all we care about is the firstborn. That's it. Nothing else matters.
Yep.
And to me, I'm going, how is that even viable? How does it make any sense at all that we're doing what's right and all they care about is the firstborn? So you're going to put 2 more out in the street? Is that how the U.S. is now? I mean, is this what we do?
As long as they're getting to collect those incentives. That's why I say, you know, the reason why you guys have a 55% female audience and the reason why we have a 40% female audience is because these women are living that life. They're with a new guy that they get with. They start a family. She says it's bull crap and bunk what you're saying about that dude because he's a great dude. He's a great father. And then she has to live like crap because one person wants to be greedy. Her kids got to go without because one person wants to be greedy. One person wants to create chaos and conflict. And these lawyers keep all that dogfighting stuff going in these family courts to where you're constantly having to spend money to even be relevant in your children's lives or stay out of jail or to pay all this child support that you can't afford. And then you're still trying to afford your family. So all of these women have jumped on board and they're like, yo, man, like, we're living like crap because of what you're doing to this poor guy. And then, like you guys said, the third person party to this is all the kids that grew up and were like, yo, man, I was the kid and you ruined my life from this stuff.
Yeah. You know, and it's like it's a battle of attrition almost for dads that, you know, they're trying like in your case. And I mean, hats off to you that, you know, thank God you're still fighting and you're still in the fight. But, you know, like I know of dads, I can name them that gave up. Like they ran out of money or they got bullhorned and just shoehorned out of the way so hard that, you know, it was like, well, you know, I can't win this fight. And they give up and they just take off, or they, you know, kind of float around on holidays and that's all they do because that's what they think that's what the mom and the courts wanted. And it's like a slap in the face to fatherhood because they're individuals that have like great characteristics. It could be a great dad, but it's just like, nah, like you're worth more in this situation just based on what you pay in child support, not based on what you can bring into the picture on time.
Yeah, I like to say I'm not dead. I'm not a deadbeat. I'm just dead broke. So you guys forced me there. You guys beat me with an ugly stick into submission to say that, okay, I haven't seen my child in 3 years. Great. Now what? Because, you know, he needed his father and it wasn't available to him. You guys got your money and that's why everybody got sued. And then I find out that you can't even hold these people accountable because they have judicial immunity to protect themselves, even if they're committing crimes against you.
Was it the diplomatic immunity? Like one of the movies I'm trying to remember is a Lethal Weapon or something like that.
Yeah. Hey, it's just like that. Diplomatic immunity. Exactly. They can walk around and commit whatever crimes they want against you and your children and your family. And because they work for the state, quote unquote, as family court actors, they've got immunity.
What's your take on the even the role of mediators? Do you feel like they're in on this too?
It just depends. Like I said, if you get that click there to where, you know, the GAL won't use you. That's what we found. You know, I've got a video, you know, my case never made sense until 5 years later when I got a video off of YouTube of my GAL talking about how they're cash for kids, how all the judges are in on it in St. Louis County. And, you know, basically they're running an extortion scheme to prevent all of the children or all of the parents in St. Louis County from their wealth. So it made a whole lot more sense once that video leaked. But you know what's even more funny than that? We've had the head judge resign. And not one of those damn people has been fired. Nobody's been to jail. Nobody's been held accountable. They're still ruining people's lives every day. Since my lawsuit was filed, there's been 14 more after it. And most of them contain the same GAL, the same therapist, and the same mediator type people in those things. So as far as mediation, you know, that's the Switzerland model. You have to have like so many parameters to even get into family court. They won't even let you in. They're like, yeah, we ain't going to hear that crap. Go share your kids and have a nice day. So they start with the mediators. And if you take all that custody chaos out of the way, it seems to work. But once you put these little cliques in place to where they're basically extorting all of the wealth from the families in their area, you got to have accountability. The way you do that is cameras in the courtrooms, remove the quasi-judicial immunity. You shouldn't be immune if you're committing crimes just because you work for the state. I mean, it can't be an upper ruling class of elites versus parents. It just can't.
Agreed. No, I'm a huge advocate for like all conversations outside of the courtroom between legal entities should be recorded as well. Because I know that in my particular case, that I found that my judge and my attorney had worked in the same practice at one point. And then I found out that like my ex's attorney was even involved with like part of a partnership at one point with the judge. It was just like, it's a giant crime. Like you've said, it's a crime syndicate is exactly what it is. It's just, and it's
the mafia never retired. They just changed their name to the American Bar Association.
Oh, they're making more money now too, which is great.
Yeah. And then all those people in the American Bar Association, guess where they go? Congress.
Yeah. For the Equal Not Less project, there's a class action lawsuit you guys have filed, right? Or is being filed?
So that is not the Equal Not Less project. That is the Fathers' Rights Movement.
Okay.
And yes, we did file or in the process of filing. I think we're going to file 2. And the reason for that is there's a huge disparity in parental rights once you're the father, but there's also a huge disparity in non-married fathers. Okay. 41% of all kids in the United States of America are born to what they call unwed parents, or, out of wedlock, or whatever you want to say. So
well, that's fun. So I don't blame them.
We've destroyed the institution of marriage. We've destroyed the birth rates. We've destroyed anything that wants to be, adequated with parents, because everybody's like, shit, I'm not going through that as an adult when I went through it as a kid. But 41% of all kids are born out of wedlock or to unwed parents. When the father, it makes sense that the father has to go get a paternity petition, right? We know who the mom is. 31% of all paternity cases, the father named the first time is not the father. So there's paternity fraud. That is 3 out of 10 cases that she says is the father is not the father. So the paternity petition needs to be in place. But once the paternity petition's in place, as an unwed father, why do I have to go file a lawsuit against her in the state to get a parenting plan, to get parental rights, to get anything else? I can go get a paternity petition. They'll put me on the birth certificate and say I'm the dad, and then they'll start ramming me with child support, but I still have no rights. That's not equal representation under the law. That's not the way the color of law is supposed to work. And that's against the law, actually. So we're going to take it from that aspect, and then we're going to take it from the married father's aspect.
Wow. And so is this like a federal level? I mean, or are you thinking per state? What's
at this time, it's going to be a federal class action. But here's the thing. If we file it at a federal level, how many tens of thousands of dads in every state are going to grab this class action lawsuit? They're going to change the language just like they did my lawsuit that's now in 13 or 14 states. And they're going to run down and they're going to sue the crap out of all of their local court directors for not enforcing the law equally to men as you are women. So there's so many ways to come at this. We've got the equal share parenting aspect. We've got the fact that you're blatantly discriminating against men 83% of the time that we don't get custody. It's even worse in Texas. The bar association, the crime mob, they say that they don't want to have a cookie cutter play system in place. Well, Texas is the epitome of a cookie cutter play system. As a matter of fact, if you get divorced in Texas, you get the first, third, and fifth Sunday, no matter what happens, because they have more police officers come on duty for those custody exchanges and stuff. And they won't even hold Dallas Cowboy games on some of those weekends because it falls on those custody exchanges. So they don't even they literally change their national football program to work around those things. How do you not get more cookie cutter than that? But you only have a 9% chance as a father to have custody in the state of Texas. 91% of all women get custody in the state of Texas.
And nobody sees a problem with this besides the fathers.
Hey, I promise you tomorrow, if dads were getting 91% of the custody, this would be fixed in a week.
Yep.
Oh yeah. All day long. All day long.
Absolutely.
In a week.
And that's where I applaud the fathers' rights movement. And there's a few other dad groups out there that I followed that you got to start somewhere. You got to start speaking up about it somehow. You've got to make the awareness, because if you just let it, acknowledge that it exists, but do nothing about it or say nothing, it doesn't mean it's going to go away.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And so, I'm proud of you and your colleagues that you're giving it a voice, and not only are you giving it a voice, but you're giving it action. You're putting it in movement, you're fulfilling that movement part of it. Things can change from this. And, heck yeah, dads need more time. Heck yeah. I see the statistics and that 83% statistic that's thrown out there about dads getting screwed out of they have, what is it, less than 25% custody 83% of the time or something like that. It's like, good God, like we can't fix this easily. And
the other every weekend thing, I think it boils down to like 21 or 25% of the time.
Yeah.
And the problem is, so let's go back to Texas, okay? The problem is that it was called Bill 803, and it was an equal shared parenting law. It goes to the committee, and the committee member won't let it out of the committee. Her name's Representative Victoria Nieve, okay? Guess what her real-time job is when she's not at the state legislature being a state legislator?
Family law attorney.
She's a family law attorney. Guess what the other person that voted no on the committee that wouldn't let it out of the committee? Family law attorney. Guess who the third person was that wouldn't let it out of the committee? Family law attorney. Mm-hmm. How is that not the fox guarding the hen house? Because you know you're going to lose a good chunk of your industry. I'm sorry. I value kids more than your profit. So you guys need to go back to chasing ambulances instead of fleecing parents for their parental time with their kids.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, and actually they would probably make more money if they would actually fight for the dads. But I think they're taking the easy handouts that come from those federal subsidies. And I could split hairs there, but yeah, I don't know if I'm getting in the wrong direction, and attacking the wrong people, but it sucks, man. It sucks.
Yeah. We just want equality. Everybody should have the same. It shouldn't matter about your county. It shouldn't matter about the court actors you choose. It should matter that you want to be an active participant in your kids' lives. You're a fit, willing, and able parent, and nobody should be able to take that away from you, and especially in the United States of America. Nobody.
Yeah. So to kind of change gears here,
we want to unpack it.
Yeah, I want to hear your deal on this, because you're a lot more connected in this incident than what we are. I mean, we kind of talked about it last week on our show from 1,000 miles away, the Chad Reed incident, and why it's such a huge deal. I mean, obviously there's a lot behind the scenes, and you can try to play devil's advocate for both sides, but like at the end of the day, a man's life was taken for a very BS reason, and it stemmed out of a child custody disagreement that mom wasn't following the rules.
So the Chad Reed case is extremely tragic. It was extremely unnecessary. It was extremely preventable. We just talked about Representative Nieve. Maybe if she'd have passed that equal shared parenting bill out of there, Chad Reed wouldn't be dead on somebody's porch, because mom wouldn't have the entitlement to think that she can keep that kid from dad when it was his custodial time. So, for those that don't know, somehow, if you were under a rock somewhere, that, Chad Reed went to pick up his child on his court-appointed ordered time, went to the mom's place of business because the child wasn't at school where dad is ordered to pick the kid up, asked the mom where he's at. Mom says he's not here, or he's not at school. I'll have to go get him. I wanted to spend time with him before I turn him over to you. Dad tells her, well, that's bull crap. He's supposed to be with me at 3:15. It's after 3:15. You see him when he's not supposed to be with me. Boyfriend, Captain Save-A-Ho, goes back in the house, gets a gun, comes back out, creates an incident. So here's the problem. Everybody's like, oh, that's self-defense. That's why this became such a national story, because it's in Texas. Everybody owns a gun, and stand your ground, and the protection of your life and all that good stuff. 2A amendment people, they're the ones that got involved with this. But most responsible 2A people have come out and condemned this, as the very definition of what not to do in a self-defense situation.
You're talking to two of them right here. Yeah, him and I both are very pro 2A, and this is bullcrap.
I mean, as a veteran looking at it too, from my perspective, just good Lord, man.
So if you provoke somebody into a situation, number one, there was a felony being committed. Texas Penal Code 2503 is a felony in Texas for parental interference. Almost all states have this law on the books. In some states like Missouri, it can be a Class D felony, or it can be a Class A misdemeanor. But almost all states have what's called parental interference with custody. Can be called some other things in some other states. But anyway, that is when the other parent, the custodial parent or non-custodial parent, won't return the child to the other parent that's supposed to have the court order time. There are laws there to protect that parent and that child. Apparently the Lubbock Police Department wasn't enforcing this dad's parental time. So he goes over there to holler at mom, and boyfriend ends up killing him. So Number one, there's a felony being committed, which is parental interference with custody. No self-defense can be claimed past that. Number two, whether that was accidental discharge or whether he was firing a warning shot, it's still illegal.
Mm-hmm.
It's against the law. So you committed 2 crimes before you ever get, once you fire that warning shot or that accidental discharge at Chad Reed's feet, he has the right to protect himself. And that's when he grabs for the gun, tries to take the gun away from him. The dude
100%.
pulls away from him, shoots him 2 times. That's second-degree felony murder, because in the commission of a felony, somebody got killed. That's not self-defense. It's not stand your ground, and you can't claim those things in court.
Nope.
Well, I mean, at that point, though, the second that he pulled the weapon out, clearly he was it was not self-defense. Clearly, he felt fine that his life was not threatened. It was for show.
It was for show, because he had even left. He went back into the business. Yeah. They say it's a business, but it looks like a residence. So he goes back into
it looks like a residence. Yeah.
Yep.
It's one of his businesses. He comes back out with the firearm, tells the dude he's got to leave again. But Chad Reed had legal business conduct on the property. He wants to know where his son is. The person he's talking to is his baby's mom that is right there in front of him. So he had legal business and reason to be there. You killed the guy. Kyle Caruso actually smiling when he comes back out with the gun. You weren't in fear for your life. You knew that these guys, so I've got text messages and Facebook posts from them. These dudes had known each other for 5 or 6 years before this incident went down. They've been to dinners together. They've been to political events together. You knew what kind of a dude Chad was. You knew he was going to get a little aggravated that you bring a gun out and threaten to kill him with it. And so you provoke that situation into something that wasn't supposed to be. But you can't claim self-defense if you're committing a crime, and there was 2 clearly committed on video before he ever shoots the poor guy.
Yep. So that was the thing too we talked about, is like, we don't know what the conversations were behind the scenes, but for him to go draw that gun or to go get the gun, like, I mean, as a bystander from 1,000 miles away, I don't know anybody in that situation, but you look at just the video and the actual recorded interaction that took place, it is completely and utterly uncalled for, like way beyond the scope of reasonable, like, self-defense. You can't claim it there.
Well,
100%.
I mean, not to be what's the word I'm looking for? Not to be uncaring or whatever, but I live in St. Louis, Missouri. We're the #1 place to get killed in the United States of America. I don't ever go to anywhere without a firearm, and that includes to pick up my own children from back when I used to pick them up from their mother, because she would try to do that too. The boyfriend would jump out and act like he's tough. Like, these aren't your kids, bro. Sit down. That's your chick. Nobody's trying to claim her back from you, bro. You can handle that mess. That's all on you. Don't try to bring her back and get a receipt later, though. But it's a very unfortunate thing. I'm in contact with his 2 stepdaughters almost daily. And yeah, the thing is that we see that a lot, though, because there was another case in Nevada, Missouri, from the guy's name is Justin Goolsby. Mom was late picking up the kid or dropping the kid off. Her dad shows up, shoots him in the face 5 times. Homeless guy. Number one, where's a homeless guy get a firearm? Number two, he just happens to be at the place. This is a homeless guy. So how did he get to the truck stop that they were doing the exchange for?
Yeah.
Apparently, mom had changed that one custody pickup. Like, that wasn't the normal place that they were supposed to pick up. And then mom sends a text at 7:01 saying, "Hey, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm going to be late." But at the 7:01 time, her bio father, is there shooting this dad in the face 5 times and killed him.
Clearly, that's,
oh my gosh,
obviously a setup. I mean,
it happened in I think it was Idaho. The guy's name was John Mast. Took him 3 years to get out from all the false allegations. Mom was saying he was abusing the kids, he was beating the kids, he was raping the kids, he was doing all this heinous stuff. The courts went through and they proved that dad wasn't doing any of this stuff. Yeah. Instead of immediately taking custody from mom and giving it to dad, they just put it back in place that dad could go pick his kids up every other weekend and they could resume their custody time. So John shows up to pick his kids up. Mom happens to be late that day, but her dad, her bio father, is in her car at the drop-off point, shoots and kills John Mast. How is that not premeditated murder on the mom's part?
Yeah. So that was the guy that, because he drove all the way from North Dakota.
Yeah,
pick
yeah,
up
he
the kids
drove.
in
He
Idaho.
drove
Yeah,
a
Say
long
what?
time ago.
I know exactly the case he's talking about now. Yeah, it was the dad that he was working the oil fields in North Dakota, drove to Idaho to pick up the kids, and
Yep.
got murdered when he came to pick up the kids.
We're seeing that all over the place now, though. There's even more
Yeah.
cases that I don't have sitting in front of me, but I dig through my phone and find you 10 more cases that have happened in the last year. So, like, legitimately, when you go to pick up your kids, you should have something in place to protect yourself because it is possible that you could be killed.
I record every single exchange, every single one I record. And it's just to protect. I mean, you never know what the interaction is going to be. And I'm in kind of a high conflict situation. So you always want to know like what's being said. But like
the one stipulation that I got in my divorce, I got railroaded in my divorce, but I had one stipulation inserted, and that was I will never meet that woman anywhere that isn't a police station, because 3 weeks from now she'll be claiming I raped her or that I assaulted her, or and then how am I supposed to argue against that if I don't have these recordings and stuff? So we would meet out in front of the local county police department for the exchange because they have cameras. And I don't want to be killed or accused of some type of a false crime that gets me in prison just because I'm trying to pick up my children.
Yeah. And the fact that it has to go there in some cases is just, I mean, it screams obviously mental instability and some other things, but like, I don't want to play doctor or anything like that. But like, how many guys fall in the situation of, that silver bullet is always floating out there. And it's like your guilt, like you said, guilty until proven either more guilty or guilty until it's just wiped clean. And like just act like it never happened. We're just not going to talk about it anymore. And there's never any repercussions for actions with this type of stuff.
Ken, with the federal lawsuit with that level, is there anything in there about potentially countersuits or whatever against mothers that are doing these things? How do we as men protect ourselves that way?
So first, let me say I'm not a lawyer. I'm a self-proclaimed pro se dad that files my own paperwork and sues the state and does all those type of things. So let's throw that out there. So I can't give legal advice, but I can say that we have a team of lawyers, California, Minnesota, one in Florida, one in Texas, that are working on this class action. This is strictly going to be against the federal government. We're not trying to pit moms, dads. We want the federal government to admit that for the last 40 years, you have targeted fathers for monetary gain and unjust enrichment, and it has to stop.
Man, wouldn't that be amazing if that passes? That's phenomenal, man. I think every father, period, and every mother, I don't care how you feel, should be applauding this. Every single one of them.
Your kids will be better off for it. Absolutely.
Yep, 100%.
But why do we have to sue, though? Why can't we just put laws in place that protect all of us and we all have a nice utopian future where kids have a great future with both of their parents? And why do we have to take it to the extremes that we have to? Yeah. So even if, let's say, worst case scenario, that they dismiss this lawsuit and they say, well, we're the federal government, you can't sue us for that, which I don't know all the legal stuff that goes into it. But let's just say that's what they do. What about the publicity that fathers had to file a class action lawsuit just to see their children?
That's going to be beneficial in itself. It's crazy to think that in the U.S., this is something we're fighting with. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean,
especially in 2021, after we go through so much in the last 19 months, now I guess 23 months of just craziness and whatever side you want to take in any argument, that we're still fighting over stuff like this. If we're willing to stand for injustice for other people, why can't we stand for this injustice too?
I would venture to say that in 2021, the fathers' rights movement is the civil rights movement of this era. Just like we had to stand up and say what you're doing to the Black community isn't okay. It's not acceptable. It's never going to be tolerated from this day forward. Just like we had to say 100 years ago for women's suffrage and that they should be allowed to vote. But we swung the pendulum too far. Okay, swinging the pendulum didn't mean we were supposed to eradicate and destroy fathers in the meantime. It was supposed to go to the middle to where everyone is equal. That's what the country, the United States, the world is about. Everybody's supposed to be equal, and fathers are not 83% of the time.
Is there, before we end this, is there, because there's been a whole lot of negative. We don't want to be a downer, what is there a positive? I mean, the
Like,
fact
what are
that
some
we're
of the
going to get
victories you're seeing? Like, I mean, I like
Okay,
that.
so let's go.
Sorry to cut you
yeah,
off.
no, it's okay. I mean, publicity is going to be massive, and I think just a lawsuit alone is going to make waves. We're going to have the ripple effect, and it's going to happen. But give us some good, like, like.
All right, let's do it. Here we go. So 4 years ago, Kentucky, with a group called the National Parents Organization. We work with them well. Got some really great friends over there. They started a bill in Kentucky, and they ran it all the way through to the final. And it was the first equal shared parenting bill in the United States of America.
Wow.
Awesome.
It had some issues with it that have been ironed out because, what happens is you have to put legislation in place, then you fix it the next go around, then you fix it at the next state. So from their legislation, we copied their legislation and we added what the Kentucky bill was missing was the clear and convincing evidence.
Okay.
They went through with the preponderance evidence. That was the only thing that Kentucky had an issue with. So now we get to Arkansas. Arkansas just passed. They're the second state in the union. A huge majority, they passed that, and it was signed into law by their governor. And it has equal shared parenting after separation or divorce, must be clear and convincing evidence if you're going to remove that other parent, not just your say-so or, whatever the judge wants to rule on that day because he had a fight with his wife over some cereal that morning or whatever his problem is.
Yeah.
So now we have that one out of the way, right? They just instituted or filed a bill in Ohio, same group with us, National Parents Organization filed it. We've been covering it. That bill is like 148 pages. It is the gangster of all gangsters for shared parenting in the United States of America. Like, you can go to jail for withholding kids, 50-50 equal shared parenting. Like, it is the gold standard of gold standards, and it's awesome.
And that one's pretty well supported, isn't it?
That bill had 61 of their 99 representatives that put their signature on that bill.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's phenomenal.
So it's gaining. Missouri has an extremely good shot of doing the same thing. We're working with Indiana. Just sent out something, as a non-for-profit, we're not allowed to lobby for,
Sure.
Democrat, Republican, things of that nature. But we can have input as one of the largest organizations in the world on what these bills should look like. So we put in some input on what the Indiana bill should look like. Oklahoma has a really, really good shot. So there's a lot of great dudes out there. I can name off the representatives from each state. So the one that passed the bill in Arkansas, his name is Jimmy Gazaway. Now, here's the crazy thing about Jimmy Gazaway, right? Jimmy Gazaway is a family law attorney, but yet he still killed the industry in his state with their Arkansas shared parenting bill.
Wow.
That is a man of integrity.
Go scorched earth. That's awesome.
That's incredible.
So Ohio, Representative Creech is a Republican, and Representative West is a Democrat. They're the two sponsors of the bill. They have 59 co-sponsors, which gives them 61 of their 90-something representatives. Missouri, we've got a Marine here. He's a senator. His name's Bratton, Rick Bratton. He's a great dude. And then we have a guy on the House of Reps side. So we filed two simultaneous bills to push them through faster. His name's Wayne Wallingford. Great older gentleman. He comes from the military as well. Oklahoma, the bill being pushed there. Mark Lawson is an awesome, phenomenal representative. So West Virginia's got a good shot to get pushed through this year. Let me think of some other states. New Hampshire's on the board. I forgot about them. They're all the way up in the far corner. South Dakota is on the board with an active bill. So even though we know these problems are in place, there are some good men and women that are stepping up to change the legislation and the laws, and we can't applaud them enough.
And that's what fathers need to hear out there. And the mothers supporting these fathers. That's so brilliant, man. That's amazing.
Yeah. Hey, Ken, I just want to thank you for being on with us and taking your time out of your evening. I know that we're 2-hour time difference out here out west. So we got the snow flying outside, but I do want to thank you for the time and your work, man, and what you do in supporting dads, and being a dad yourself and what you do for your kids. Hats off to you and your efforts and your team around you.
Yep.
You guys are making a difference.
And I mean, we are proud to associate with you guys, but I have to ask you personally, how is the weather out in Missouri right now?
Right now we are like what is going on? I think it's like 70 degrees outside.
So I of course I did basic in Fort Lost in the Woods. So that's why I have to ask, because I've spent a little time in the St. Louis there, and man, it's more bipolar than we have up here.
Right. It's supposed to be like 70 degrees tomorrow, and then it's supposed to be like 30 the following day. Like if you want to see some messed up weather, come to Missouri. It's crazy here. But they say we're 6 people away from knowing everybody in the world. And I think that every time organizations like you guys with the Dadvocate podcast and the Father's Rights Movement and Equal Not Less, we keep putting more and more chairs together, and eventually you're not going to be able to ignore all of these chairs, because we all have the same voice. We want equality for our kids. Our kids deserve better, and you're going to give it to us one way or another.
Yeah.
And I totally agree.
I completely agree, man. Well said.
I mean, thank you. Gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, what more can we say? I'm brilliant. We're so happy about this.
I'm so glad you came on, and I'm glad I slid into your DMs at like 1 o'clock in the morning, saying like, man, hey, we do a podcast out west. Like, any chance you want to be on with us? And and so you're actually kicking off, like, this is our first episode of like
season
our
2,
anniversary. Season 2. Like, we're in our second year, or entering our second year of doing this podcast. And man, thank you. And this one's gonna be tough to top. Thank you.
Absolutely.